Hey, how you doing? Have you heard about the Architect Accelerator Course? If not, you definitely should check it out. Let me tell you some more about it. So the Architect Accelerator Course is a course that's run by Sean Astrakhan. He's based in the US. He's a lovely fellow, really. And yeah, it's basically bridging that gap for solution architects and wannabe solution architects who maybe need to have a bit more of some advanced topics to talk about and advanced things to look into. One of the best bits about the course is how much effort Sean and his team have put into creating a community of vibe around it. He's got lots of integrations working, and you can work out when the next sessions are, have a look at people's intros, discuss technical topics and help out. It's a really, really good community. I'm John Russell from the Sprint Zero podcast, and just wanted to say thank you to Sean and for his continued sponsorship. If you want to find out more about the Accelerator course, please have a look at the link in the episode description. Thanks.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Sprint Zero podcast. My name is Mike Gowland and I'm here with my co-partner, in crime, John Russell. Say hello, John.
Nice rolling of the R's there. I was just showing people this. I know this is like before Christmas. When this goes out, it's going to be after. So we are going to have got through all of these.
Probably April by the time this goes out.
Yeah, maybe. But anyway,
make sure we only talk about Christmas.
Like yeah. Let's not talk about Christmas.
Anyway, John, we got a really special guest today. Welcome to the podcast, Sean Astrakhan. Is that how you say your name?
You nailed it. The K is silent, but I'm so excited to be here. Y'all are great. Been listening forever. Excited to be raw, real.
Yeah. They've heard enough of you at the start of the episode. Sean is a seasoned solutions architect at Microsoft and the mind behind Untethered 365, our sponsor. He's passionate about teaching others to build robust, scalable solutions in the Power Platform without falling into the trap of over-engineering, which I'm probably guilty of, if I'll tell you later. Today, he'll share some of his top architectural strategies to help us discern the right tools and features for our projects. Sean, did you know you were delving secrets to us today?
I do know that now. I know.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, just to clarify, I contracted for Microsoft in the past. I've done all kinds of contracting for a lot of companies. I'm not a full-time anything.
Cool. Welcome to the podcast, Sean.
Thank you. This is awesome. Let's do this. Uncomfortability corner. I'm stoked and I'm prepared. I have my notes.
Nice.
You say nice. Nothing yet.
Sean, thanks for coming to the podcast, man. And also, we really both appreciate the sponsorship and stuff because it helps us keep the lights on. And that means a lot. Do you want to tell us a little bit, Sean, about your history and how you got to where you are today? Because I think a lot of people will see you on LinkedIn and stuff, but might not know your background and where you came from and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. I guess my working journey started... Did I tell you when I got fired twice from a Mexican restaurant?
No. I felt like you need to tell us that.
So that happened, and then...
Was it because of the underlay? No.
Right. And that got me thinking maybe I should, go to college and do things. And at the time, it was an incredible experience because I learned Spanish and I learned the consequences of when you say your opinion too loudly. And in that experience, I thought, okay, and what does this really say about myself and what I want to do with the world? And what I realized what I want to do is make things efficient, because that's what I was complaining about at the restaurant. And in tech, you get to be very efficient. But what I didn't know when I was 17 that I know now is it's all about how you communicate ideas and get people on board and build people up. And how can you do that and write good software, put them all together, and then you can make something that is really impactful and you can be proud of it. And I don't think I answered your question at all of how I got there, but that's how I feel about the question. Happy to dive into specifics.
I think we got the A and we got the B, and there's just the bit in the middle, but I think we can probably piece it together. But do tell us.
I mean, Sean. So, you say about the Mexican restaurant. What did you learn then from? Do you think the Mexican restaurant was how not to do things, and then you've worked out in your journey how to best communicate with people?
Yeah. So at the Mexican restaurant, the issue with we got into a lot of arguments around, such as I was in the front of the house. They thought I was a people person. They wanted to be engaged with people, but I wanted to be in the back of the house practicing my Spanish. And the people in the back of the house wanted to learn English. So I was like, it's obvious to swap us. But they were uncomfortable with it because they thought their customers would be uncomfortable with someone who speaks English with an accent. And that's kind of one of the big rules of consulting is that's a huge assumption.
Yeah.
Like, did you actually talk to your end users? Would they be uncomfortable with somebody doing that? What level of English are they getting into? If they're discussing like Tolstoy with the cashier, sure. But really, if it comes down to do you want black or pinto beans, is that really gonna be a problem? Like just that little example of like, okay, how do I convince these people that this is gonna be best for me and them, but at the same time not be so arrogant that I know my way is gonna work? How can we turn this into an experiment where we all try this and we can all benefit from it? And just that conversation alone, I think, was huge in my technical career. All of the software I learned that we all learn, it's all going to get outdated. There's going to be the new thing.
Yeah.
Like, sure, you can learn best practices, which is obviously all the things I teach. But I think the communication element there that I learned from that experience, and obviously when I got in trouble for it, I learned don't speak to people a certain way. Don't be so loud about your opinions. And then with that, I learned how to not transfer that into the actual workplace. And I'm happy I got that out of my system when I was like 17, because I still see people today who have issues communicating or can come off as way too domineering in the workplace, and nobody wants to work with them, and they really hinder their career.
And do you think that really comes down to experience, like having a bad experience with communication? Do you think that's
for me?
And for other people mainly? I think for other people as well. Do you think?
Yeah, I think when you are, for instance, in my example, very confident in what I thought was the right way, and then I learned that I was very wrong, and then I learned how that impacted people, and they didn't want to like talk to me. I was like, I never want to be that way. I just thought this idea was awesome. I didn't realize that the way I spoke could then cause you to feel like I think you're like dumb or you're incorrect. And I would never want to make somebody feel that way. So like learning that as a teenager, like being able to apply that in my adult life, I don't know how someone could learn that from like a book. You have to unfortunately make the mistakes. I think the same thing with like software architecture. Like there is an X number of years and that decides you're good at software. To me, it's like, how many giant mistakes did you make and how old did you learn from them? I don't know a single architect who didn't mess something up early on, big time in some sort of way, and then really learn from it.
I think those mistakes are important though, aren't they? Especially if you're moving into architecture, but in any role really, whether it's down to essential skills or whether it's technically, you always learn from those mistakes. If you're willing to learn, you can learn from those mistakes. And I think that's probably the key bit, is that you develop as a person and you understand why things went wrong, rather than just leaving it and just assuming that you just carry on, assuming that you're right, even when you're wrong, and not really learning from it.
Yeah, and I would add on that learning from your mistakes sounds cool, but you can get deep into understanding your own mistake and understanding how your brain went to creating that problem to begin with, and how do you keep your brain from doing that again. A common thing I think about is like somebody considered using like, I don't know, virtual tables instead of migrating the data to Dataverse. And then that solution didn't occur to me maybe years ago. And in that case, I'm like, why didn't my brain think of virtual tables? Okay, I didn't know virtual tables existed. End of conversation. Like, dive deeper. Why didn't I spend the time to find that out? Why didn't I look into Googling first something like this? Why didn't I think through these limitations and understanding like what's the bias I have in my own thinking? And then I can bring that to like the next project that has nothing to do with virtual tables.
And virtual tables will cause you no end of problems as well, from my experience.
Sean, so do you want to tell us a little bit more about Untethered and how you got to there, how that came about?
Yeah, I noticed, well, teaching was my first career. I taught Spanish, and I always wanted to get back into it. And like, yeah, I did some consulting, some training, and it was fun. But I felt that like that was my gift. I feel like I can take complex ideas and explain them. And I feel like a lot of people can do that. But I feel like I can explain them and get people to be challenged and retain it. And I feel like that's a special thing I've developed and really crafted and tried to get good at. And I didn't see a lot of that in the training space. What I see a lot in the training space is someone who's incredibly talented at the tech, someone who's really good at explaining ideas, but then like can't create an environment for the person to make their own mistakes, like what we talked about, and then also like challenge their own thinking and go through that. If I show you the problems of virtual tables, like you're like, okay, that's it. Cool, I know that now. Sure. But then do you know that the next time you get a project that's similar to virtual tables, you know to watch out for them and you know what to watch out for? Like teach somebody like how to think about architecting. And that is technology agnostic. And I felt like that's really what made me successful. Like I've jumped from so many tech stacks and I was able to do that because I know like how to approach software. And I was like, I think this is useful. How do I teach this? I didn't want to compete with like April Dunham or Reza Durrani or Shane Young, who are just crushing it on all of like the beginning intermediate areas of Power Platform. They get into some advanced areas, but I just jumped into like, I want to make an advanced thing and see how people respond. And so far they've liked it. So we've been going 1 year.
It is a really good course.
I think there is a big gap in the advanced training space for Power Platform. There is so much content that's aimed towards the beginner or intermediate level, and for good reason, right? Because these tools are designed for your makers or your citizen developers. It's kind of like an assumption that if you're a pro coder, you're just going to pick it all up. But actually, like, there's a lot of parts of tech, and even like, I'll say I struggle with Copilot Studio. Literally, I just cannot. I really struggle to wrap my head around it. I'm actually on a project at the moment where I'm working with it, so I'm learning as I go along. But I kind of want to go into like the more advanced stuff because I realise that I need to do more than just like read back from a website or a SharePoint document library. Like I need to do more. I need to go into like writing skills and stuff like that. And apart from that, you got Microsoft Learn, you've got LLMs, but in terms of courses, YouTube content, it's not. It doesn't seem to be as there as the really intermediate stuff like create your first Copilot. Like there's hundreds of videos of how to connect a Copilot to a SharePoint document library. Like I don't know how many other ways you can go about it, but I need to do more than that.
And those questions you're bringing up is like you're already thinking like enterprise. I don't need something that talks to a website. I need something that talks to my, let's say, Dataverse data. But what if some of my data lives in SharePoint? But what if I have tens of hundreds of thousands of records in Dataverse? What if my Dataverse tables are connected to other Dataverse tables? Like, how does that security work? What if I want people to be publicly accessing my site via Power Pages and talking to Copilot Studio? These questions become spaghetti and complicated and fascinating and fun, and it can be turned into a video. But I feel like for that to truly be learned and understood and taken apart, it needs to be in a group setting with other.
It needs to be interactive, right?
People. Sorry?
Yeah. It needs to be interactive.
Yeah, for sure.
And how good is that? Sorry, Mike. How good is that Heartbeat app as well that you use? Like, that's really solid. Like, for people who not really come across the course, Sean basically delivers all the content and chats and communication and everything through an app called Heartbeat, and it's basically like a training course, but it's interactive. It's really interactive, and it gives you like a really good sense of community inside that Heartbeat application and inside that space. How did you find that? Because I'd not until you showed it to us when we were on the course. I hadn't heard of it before.
Yeah, so Heartbeat's great. I don't want to give them too much credit. What you see is just a piece of it. I'm spending at least $500 a month in tech because it's Heartbeat teamed with like Loom, teamed with like VideoAs, teamed with like a few Confluence and a few other document learning tools I wanted that are all Frankenstein together, where Heartbeat is just like kind of the front face of it. But behind the scenes, It's so much more than Heartbeat, because Heartbeat is just another Slack, another WhatsApp, another communication tool. But I've kind of Frankensteined it to be a learning experience that I would want to pay for. Like, the program's not cheap. It's $500 for 8 weeks. And I want people to get something that's worth their money beyond just getting a lot of technical experience. I want them to come in and see it there. There's a reason there's no mobile app. There's no WhatsApp group. I think for Mike, the questions you just brought up in Copilot Studio, you can't just ask that in a message and hit send. You're going to need screenshots. You might need a video. And I wanted a platform where we could do that.
It sounds a bit like this podcast where we Frankenstein Riverside and Buzzsprout and PowerPoint together to create Sprint Zero.
Yeah. Yeah, but in the end, I just come here and I think, oh, I just have this one nice thing I interact with. It's all there. I want to just kind of like, how we build software. I wanted the least amount of friction. It's super clear what's happening, where you need to go, and all that.
Yeah, one-click buy button.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, Sean, on the course, you've mentioned the importance of avoiding over-engineering. Can you give us an example of a project where simplifying the architecture led to a more successful outcome?
Yeah, one that I see a lot is people build Canvas apps on top of SharePoint for no reason.
Yeah.
Like, SharePoint does a ton already.
Yes, Sean.
Why are you doing that? I think there's obviously places for Canvas apps, but there's no reason for that. Here's one that literally I had a bunch of solutions architects in the program bomb this question today. Not because they're bad solutions architects. By the way, I don't think I'm a genius. I failed at this question too. A lot of the curriculum is me making mistakes and then presenting them to other people so they don't do the same. It was a scenario where a customer is using SurveyMonkey. They're interested in migrating to Dynamics 365 customer voice. It sounds very exciting. And then they ask you as a solutions architect, how do we do that? Now, a common mistake that I think we make is we jump into talking about tech. We talk about what we're comfortable with. We didn't actually assess what benefit that would give them to be on customer voice. We also didn't start asking questions of like, why is it causing you a problem? And then when we actually run through this simulation, it comes to find out, like, if you ask the simple question of, if I don't move to this other tool, what happens? The answer is, oh, we actually really like SurveyMonkey. We just thought it would be more consolidated in customer voice. You'll find out that they have no idea what benefit it'll bring them. So you could sell them on customer voice, like totally go for it. But the point here is like, are you just going to be replacing a thing they have, or are you going to be giving them something that's like making them money, making them more money, or something that's saving them by adding more security, giving them access to making business decisions? If you're not doing any of that, congratulations, you migrated them to a tool that potentially has less features. And now you have to remember to onboard people, migrate all the data, reconfigure all the automations in the end to give them a tool that end users may think is less powerful.
And
it's all about delivering value. It's delivering value, isn't it?
Yeah.
And also addressing what the actual problem is. Because that's if you get blinded by the tech early on as a solution architect or as a consultant, you might skim over the real problems because you're trying to retrofit the problem to the solution that you've already decided in your mind, all right, that's a Canvas app.
Exactly. And another one, if we just want another technical example, is I saw somebody, and I think Parvez would lose it if he heard this, they were trying to take apart the kind of like the XML in the solution zip file to make a view that would not support any kind of filtering, but it would have its own clever fetch XML so it can join and union tables in ways that isn't supported with the designer. And it sounds really cool, and they were going to present this to the client. And then I asked, well, what happens if they want to change one of the filters just slightly? They're like, well, they'll need to contact us. I was like, wow, you just created a bottleneck for yourself. What's the point of this story? A common over-architecting issue is people only think about the tools they're good with and they solve every tool that way. Like, I'm not a Power BI expert, but Power BI would be a much better solution for what I just said that brings the power back to the end user. That was an over-architecting scenario.
So that kind of like really goes nicely into the next question. Like, when you're starting a new project, how do you determine which tool within the Power Platform is the most appropriate? Now, I think we've kind of already answered that question because it's not really about the tool as such. It's about the problem first, right?
Yeah, for sure. Another thing, it's what you just said. I would add, I look at what my team can do, and I look at where we're probably going to fail at it. Like, we're obviously good at Dataverse. We're obviously good at Power Automate. Is there something else here we're not really considering? One example was, they wanted to have an environment where all of the users, this was a huge enterprise company, all of their users could have like one central place they can go in and like create, I don't know, like tickets or something, and then see the results of those tickets. And then you can go build that in Dataverse, you can go do a Canvas apps, whatever you want. And in that case, I think what I was proud of was being able to step back and say, I know we're good at these tools, but what we're not going to escape is the issue of how do I add people across environments to like one environment without making that a nightmare? And I pause and did not think like, how do I move all of these people? And instead, I kind of flip the question and I'm like, how can I build something that doesn't involve that just, it's an app that is already visible by all these people from the beginning. And once you do that, you realize, okay, if I don't have to move these people, what tools can do that? Well, like Teams can do that. They can interact with Teams with adaptive cards. Everybody has it across their organization. And if security isn't an issue because we're trying to expose it to everybody, then the door opens differently. And when we ended up doing, which was super creative, somebody else kind of thought about this one, was just using Power Pages, actually. Using Power Pages as an internal website, and then that gets access to everybody. We're not using default Dataverse. We're not using default like SharePoint environment. And then we can make it here, but it still has access to everybody with the least amount of friction. No one's adding any kind of special Azure AD Entra groups and migrating stuff. We never had to worry about that. It's just, do you have the company email? Boom, you're in the end.
Nice. I quite like that, actually.
Yeah, it's hard though, because you have to like, I had to not think in Dataverse Power Platform necessarily terms. I had to think about like the problem, flipping the problem, and then think about tools that I don't really know that well, like Power Pages.
I love that. I've done that a few times where I've like turned the problem the other way, and then you actually come up with a solution. Like, is it because you can get stuck in Power Platform, right? And looking out and thinking, oh, these are the only services I have, and that's especially true where we've talked about a custom connector code quite a bit, and that's like one of those things. Is like, it's there, just go use it.
Right, and then even like, is it going to be blasphemous if I talk about tools that aren't Microsoft?
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So I think like Microsoft says some incredibly powerful tools, but there are other ones. And I think to be a true solutions architect, it doesn't mean take them away from these tools. It means like, is there something that like integrates like a little stronger with it? Like, was it Power Automate Desktop's incredible, but from what I've seen of it, it's all based on taking apart the HTML. And then you get into situations like LinkedIn and other websites specifically block that type of stuff. They don't put HTML tables. They put a bunch of divs, and the divs dynamically change. Yeah. In those cases, to have a tool like, what is it called, like Extracorder or something, that moves the mouse in certain ways and can mimic that action on virtual machines might be a lot better than something that's just like pulling HTML. But you would have to flip how you think about the problem. You don't think about how do I make Power Automate Desktop do this? You just think about what tool can accomplish.
Yeah. Can we talk about Power Automate Desktop for a minute? Because I really don't like... I've never been a fan of that side of automation. And I delved into it back in my last role when Power Automate was UiPath. Was it UiPath? Back in the day. And they had a, I think it's actually what Power Automate Desktop is now. To me, it's Wallace and Gromit automation. If you guys get that reference,
I think that's a cartoon, right?
Yeah, the typing goes. So
it's hard. I'm not going to pretend it isn't. It's very, I would say, if you know Power Automate, you're like 30% of the way there for Power Automate Desktop. Like I see, Jenkins, I'm forgetting his name, Jasper, the one who has the Power Automate Desktop course, that like Anders.
Yeah,
he has that Power
Anders
Automate
Jensen.
Desktop course. And then I see Agnius Bartnikas. His name is up on my LinkedIn, so I could say it from there. Those two, I see what they talk about Power Automate Desktop, and it's incredible. It's a tricky tool. That's all I can say. It's different than Power Automate. It's like you're entering a different ecosystem. It's like opening up, like, I don't know, SSIS for the first time. It's a whole different wizard. They use it. They love it. They have careers around it. A lot of companies use it in big ways. I fully trust it for that reason. But it has a steep learning curve, and it does scare people.
Yeah, I think my concern around it is it's not how easy or difficult it is to use, but I've just never believed that if you have to simulate mouse clicks to do automation, I kind of just don't feel like it's the right way to go about it. To me, I guess it's maybe more of a bit of like a solution architect head on it. It feels very flaky. It feels like one update could break your automation, and it's just like not even a technical update. A slight UI tweak could just completely throw things off.
Yeah, I tried to look into Power Automate Desktop at a previous role to help do automated testing of Dynamics customer service. And yeah, it was an absolute mission. It was just impossible. So they ended up looking at another tool called LeapWorks, which is a pretty good tool actually. I was really impressed with that, and that was a Microsoft partner actually internally. So I think the question that I want to throw back to Sean is, being an independent solution architect, do you think it's easier than if you're embedded inside a Microsoft partner? If you're a solution architect and you think, well, that tool's all in the Microsoft stack's not going to do that, so surely we should be using something else. I think it's harder for a solution architect at a Microsoft partner to be able to suggest non-Microsoft products. I
think it depends on the consulting company. I've worked at plenty that don't care. They're like, are we bringing value to the business? Do whatever you need to do to get it out there.
Okay.
I would say I've met very few. I've been in a couple scenarios where I've seen some consulting companies who try to win the deal by, like, let's say they have like some WordPress MySQL stack and they try to create they're trying to like add a chatbot functionality to it, and so they're going to spin up some Dataverse or MS SQL environment just because that's what they know, and they end up building this like hybrid system for the customer instead of staying in the zone that the customer is already in. I've seen that only once, but overall the consulting companies I've had the pleasure of working with, they didn't give me any pushback on that. They were easily convinced that, like, okay, it's not about evangelizing a certain platform. It's about picking like what is better here. So in my experience, no, they were both flexible towards it. I'll say that when I've had to do it on my own and solution architect it all my own way, it's nice because I don't have to worry about what you just said, and I could just like blow full force, say whatever I want, not worry about like even having that conversation, and that is nice. But then the downside of that is, well, the responsibility is on you. No one else can review your stuff. You're top dog, and then yeah, you get paid the big bucks, but then it's like you really look like an idiot if you get it wrong, and that's there's a lot
more to learn, right? There's a lot more to learn because there's enough in the Microsoft stack to learn, to know about, let alone other tools out there that potentially are better.
Right.
That's a steep learning curve.
So, Sean, many of our listeners are keen on best practices. What are the top 3 pitfalls you see people fall into when they first start working with the Power Platform?
Yeah, the one where you just use the tool you're good at, like the example I gave earlier where he tried to, or she, I won't reveal who they were, tried to Frankenstein the XML instead of just using Power BI. I think that's the first one. I think the other one is trying to kind of reverse the problem, like watching out for something that, here's one that I did. I had to do this API integration, and I know that when you build like batch processes, there needs to be like a batch table that has all the transactions underneath. And well, that's just how it's done. And the whole time I was trying to like force whoever was consuming this to create that batch record first and then create the transactions. Ideally, they can do it all in one go, but because of the limits of the system, I was trying to force them to create that batch record first. And so I was going in circles on the architecture and the way we could do it because the whole time I was thinking batch record must be created first. But if I remove that, and a different solution architect showed me up, he's like, what if you just didn't do that? What if we just created a bunch of transactions and then we made sure all the GUIDs to the batch were already there, and then in the background, you can trigger it off of there. What we had to do was we stored the like status of like starting the execution of the batch, like making sure the batch is running. We stored all of that on the transactions table, which is a giant duplication and shouldn't be done normally. But in this case, it actually made a lot more sense for how the API was, we integrate with the API. So what's the main lesson here is whatever a best practice is, make sure you're not stuck in it. And if you feel like you're spinning your wheels, like what if you were Picasso and you broke that rule and you stepped away from it? And you're like, what if we don't have to do it that way? What if there doesn't have to be a batch record first? I think that kind of thinking is incredibly hard, but that's something I would advise is like, don't assume this one thing has to be this way. Did you want 3? I gave you 2. I'm happy to show a third.
Yeah. The question asked for a third one, so
yeah, that's it. If you don't, it's the end of the podcast.
Yeah, the third one would be write out all your test cases. I know you're not going to do it because it's boring and it takes a while, but I guarantee you that paying attention 5 minutes more will give you like 5% higher salary to your peers. I've noticed it be so much more effective when I've written down like all the ways it could fail, all the things we need to test for. It's so, for me personally, it's so uninteresting to do. I want to code. I want to move on to the next thing. I don't want to sit there and test it again. But actually writing those cases, because I meet few companies that have the full power to pay for in the budget for like full regression tests and full unit testing, just to like manually test those and finding all the ways it can fall apart. Having that spreadsheet of ways that this feature needs to be tested, like you'll be the hero. You'll find stuff no one else will. You're going to look like a genius at your job. I've really saved myself and looked awesome at work just from making a boring list of things.
Yeah, because actually, to a lot of people, it is really important, and actually, they don't probably know. It's like a subconscious thing, right? Mm-hmm. They don't know until they don't know until they know, and when they get to that part of the project, they're like, "Oh, yeah," and then Sean comes in with test plan.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, I think this is great for people like early in their career or have imposter syndrome and they don't know how high they can go. I'm like, where you can stand apart is pay a little more attention. In the meeting, like, don't space out, don't check your LinkedIn, like, try to really listen to what the person is saying. Make your test cases. You will be far better than somebody who has 10 more years experience than you. Someone who's overall just smarter than you in tech because they missed out on that human element and they are definitely not doing those things. I mean, in today's world, it's so stimulating with all like the distractions we have. So if you can be undistracted for longer, you have a huge edge.
So I heard a term today, and it was used quite a lot by one particular person today, and the term was rigor. And I haven't heard that word for quite a long time, but I think that's quite pertinent to the conversation that we're having here. Like, just take that little extra time to really look at your data. Is the production environment good to go with a deployment, with the data that's there? Do we need to do anything to the data to make sure that it's sanitized or correct? Take that extra step, and it might not be you that takes that extra step. It might be the client. It might be, I don't know, solution architect. It might be a tester or something. But yeah, that was really interesting today, and the person really nailed it on the head when he said that. I thought it was really good. Yeah. The question that we were going to ask next, which probably isn't really a very real crap question. So, because we were going to ask if you could create a Power App to solve any everyday problem, what would it be and why? But really, I think that question is just it's shit. Because
it is, but it isn't. You just need to change Power App to solution.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go with that then. If you could create any solution to solve any everyday problem, what would it be and why?
Just to say that John was going to ask that question, not us.
It would be an app that, can I just say any app that I think should exist? I feel like that's the spirit.
Yeah, it's fine. If it wipes their own ass, it's fine.
It would be an app that can assess what you're best at and what you like doing and how you can make money on those things.
Isn't that just analyzing your Google search history?
Well, Mike, I don't know about your Google search history, but I don't think mine is going to get me to there.
Oh, of course you use Bing.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, no, that is
of people, I think that's the hardest problem in life. I think finding a partner, finding friends, finding a high-paying job is so much easier than finding a way to get paid for something you really love doing.
Yeah.
That is hard. I know very, very few people who have that.
I think there will come a time where, and maybe it's not in the too distant future, where you would be able to, using our old friend, or not so old friend, AI, have some kind of personal assistant which, really listens to you and, the things that you're good at. The problem I think there would be with that is A, the amount of data that it would need, and B, where that data is. They're the key things, because it's personal identifiable information, right?
I mean, it's beyond PII, really, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's like your soul. It's like
Yeah.
the digital imprint of your soul, basically. Because that's most people take. I mean, it's taken me like, I don't know, how old was I when I went? It took me 42 years to realise consultancy is what I should be doing. And it took quite a major kind of, but not specifically to me, but it was like quite a big life event for me to think, right, okay, yeah, the stuff that I'm doing that's bollocks. I need to do something else that's more worthwhile.
Is this, if I can flip the interview, do you love it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Every day I love it.
Wait,
yeah.
what are we talking about?
Your Google search history.
Yeah, not that.
I think that's beautiful, but that also the app I said why I think it can exist is because AI runs on previously collected data. And what I'm talking about is your job might not exist yet. Like, it might not be a thing. It might be invented in the future and you have to get there. Like, for Uber, I think he didn't start as, I'm going to invent Uber. I think what he started as, like, I'm going to start a service where we can split the cost of gas on the trip. And then the next phase of that was like, this is pretty cool, but can we invent an app that lets me borrow my friend's car? And then that eventually evolved into, wait a second, what about I can borrow a stranger's? What about forget borrowing a car, a stranger drives me? And those iterations from phase one, it's like, what do you want to do with your life? He couldn't even imagine what Uber would be. And it's not about iterations, because that assumes like your first version is just going to get better. It's like your first version and your final version are completely two different things. You just had to go through that gauntlet. By the way, everything I just said about Uber is completely made up. That's not their history at all. But that's the kind of thing I'm trying to say is like, step 9 is not the same as step 1, and you couldn't imagine.
And I think that is a shift.
He did wake up one day and say, I'm just going to invent Uber.
Yeah, exactly. So the complete opposite of the whole moral.
But I think it's a shift for not so much our generation, but I think the next generation. That what you're talking about is going to be something that's going to be required, because when we went to university or school or whatever, I felt like I was very boxed into the degree I was doing, into the career path that I would go into. And there was the start of rumblings of actually, go to university and do something that you really, really are passionate about, because actually what people are looking for those people who have gone to university is that they've been able to study and, work at something consistently for 4 years or whatever. So yeah, I think about like how that's changing for like my daughters, basically. I think they're going to be in a very different world to me. And the difference is going to be a lot greater than it has been in previous generations.
Yeah, and I think it'll really require some of their creative elements. Like, I remember you all had a call, I think it was Charles Sexton, where you talked about like what AI is going to replace and not replace. And I think it's actually going to replace a ton. Not yet. I don't think it's going to take like 5-10 years, but I think about it from the aspect of like, do you have any friends who are front-end developers? Yeah, like I'm curious how many of them can easily find employment today. Like my front-end friends are having to go merge into full stack because there's much fewer and fewer jobs because AI can write that for you. Like AI is already writing the Canvas app. It's not quite there. It's going to get better at that. So like having those niche tech skills of knowing like how to style CSS, that's like doesn't matter. You can look that up. So from there, it's like, what does the actual work landscape look like? And then the more, I guess, human skills is like where you can have an edge. And then especially your creativity. I guess I almost feel bad for the future generation because I think some of those like jobs that you can kind of relax in that still pay well, like if you were just doing style sheets or something, or you were just doing like basic database migrations, like I think some of that's going to be gone in the future. And I'm very curious what that's going to look like for the software landscape. Like, are we all going to have really strong business skills? And what if we just want to code? And like, will there be a place for all those people?
I think it will come down to really good communication skills. I think because that is the core thing in all the problems that I've seen across work and also in my personal life. It always comes back to communication. Pretty much 100% of the time. There's like a miscommunication of something. There is an assumption by one party or another. There is no communication when there should have been at the right time with the right people. And I think if you are good at being able to have, really honest conversations and care for people, then I don't think AI is going to ever replace that. It's not possible because that's what it kind of means to be human, I think. Jesus, that was profound.
That was deep.
Right, moving on.
Do you
Let's
want
get
really
uncomfortable.
deep? Yeah. So, Sean, you know what we're about to talk about. When was the last time you felt uncomfortable, whether that was in or out of work? Explain how you felt, how you managed to get through it, and what did you learn from it?
When you asked me about my Bing history earlier, so I guess the last time I was truly, I've been giving this a lot of thought. Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, of course.
Sure.
Douchebags in the workplace. That's, I think, where I felt uncomfortable. It hasn't happened in the last few years. I'm very grateful for that. But in the past, I've worked with a lot of very, arrogant, bravado-driven, been at the company a while, think their way is best, comfortable interrupting you, think you're wasting their time when you talk type of idiots. And they're not idiots in the sense that they're not smart. They're clearly very smart. They got to that position. I think they're idiots in the terms of not understanding how their words and their actions impact other people. And I've just been in a few meetings where I would speak up and say something like, well, why are we doing it this way with the API? Couldn't we do this other thing? And then I heard a noticeable groan, and the person's like, you're always bringing up these questions. Sometimes we just got to get it done. And I'm like, you're raising your voice. I might have a stupid question, but by no means are you allowed to speak that way in any kind of setting where I can feel okay with that. I'm very proud that yes, America is a very politically correct culture, and there are definitely downsides to that. But in the workplace, it's amazing and create a much safer environment for that reason. And what I regret in those situations that I didn't speak up more. And I think I would be scared to speak up because I'm scared to get fired. I'm scared to be wrong, or I'm just put in a fear or frozen state because of the way the person spoke to me. But luckily, when that happened, I don't know, 7 years ago, 6 years ago, I was at a different place. And I got to relive it, and the person said that thing, and the thing the whole time that I wish I said, I got to say it. So when this person raised their voice to me, I'm like, we need to understand what's going on here. I am consulting for you. I'm a contractor. You are in a position of privilege because you've been here for a long time and you're full time. That is a completely different power dynamic, and you need to be aware of that before you come over here and speak this way, because I can't speak that way back at you. You can speak that way within your department because you're all equals. I'm not the equal here. Neither is my team. And that was amazing to do that. I want to say, I said it this aggressively. I said it in front of a group of people and I served him. No, I didn't. I put it as a sidebar. We spoke one-on-one. But the point is, that kind of thing, he needed to hear that because in no other situation would anyone tell him that because they're too scared.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. And it's whether they learn from that, though. That's the thing. And I'd like to say there are some people who get told something like that. They do listen and they do take it forward, but I don't know. I'd love to see the statistics on that, but no one's going to answer that survey.
Yeah, people abusing their own power. Yeah, and it wasn't even it was a fairly small company where this person said this, and the fact that he spoke that way, I don't think it would be a lot harder to speak that way at a much larger company. But regardless of the company, we don't talk that way. That's why you speaking that way is not going to really push the goals of what we're trying to do any faster.
Nice one. Well, Thank you very much, Sean, for coming on the podcast today. I really appreciate it. We really appreciate it. Links to your LinkedIn and also to the brilliant Architects Accelerator course will be in the show notes. And any other links that we've mentioned will also be there too. Music today was provided by Ken Like Fit, and you can find his music on Spotify. Again, the link will be in the show notes. Additional music used in the episode also credited in the show notes. Unfortunately for you, you missed the play of Neighbours at the start. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss. I can see him looking. I can see him going for it. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss the next episode. We would also really appreciate it if you gave us a follow on LinkedIn. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please give us a review on your chosen podcast platform. And obviously, as we are video now, please subscribe to the Sprint Zero channel. Thank you very much.
On YouTube.
On YouTube, yeah.
YouTube.
Thank you very much. We've been Sprint Zero.
What they do on YouTube? They click the
click there or something.
Click the like and subscribe button so you
hit
don't
the bell.
miss the next episode or something like that.
So we've been Mike Gallen. Say goodbye, Mike.
Goodbye, Mike.
Sean Astrakhan. Say goodbye, Sean.
Bye.
And I'm John, and we'll see you on the next episode. Nice one. Love you, Mike. Love you, Sean.
Love you guys.
Love you, Sean. Sure, do you feel like you get value for money on this? With the sponsorship?
Yeah. I feel bad for the audience member. They have to hear I don't think my voice is used in the ad anymore. So thank God.
No, it's your... maybe it's your country voice.
That's right.
Yeah. Can you do that for us now?
That's AI, man. I can't speak.
No.
Yeah. Well, Mike, if you were in my course like you're registered for, you would have learned these tools. I'm kidding.
Maybe next year. Love you all.
Nice one.
Yeah.
See you later. Bye,
Cheers,
everyone.
y'all.
Cheers.